Here we go.
Hello, hi everybody. My name is Laura.
Hi guys, it's Irina here.
Sorry, we've just downed our pizza and we are currently onto our gin and tonic, so we are feeling very good. We are
Cheers to that.
very excited to be here with you all. Very interesting. We have some attendees all over Australia, so that's super exciting. Sorry, I'm just getting compliments on my phone. I'm going to have to move that out of the way so I don't get distracted. We are just going to have a little bit of chit chat now because we do want to give people time to join the webinar, and then we'll get stuck into it. This is, I think, a topic that's pretty close to both of our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if we get to the more formal introductions in a moment, but in my line of work is oncology, so the world of cancer. We're having lots of challenging conversations with owners and sometimes also with the regular vets that refer cases to me.
Yeah.
So I think I can't stress enough how important it is to know your communication skills well and sort of have a feel for the different types of owners, different types of clients, and their emotional state when they walk in the door.
On that note, and again, we are just going to bide time for a couple of minutes. Can I ask what drew you to oncology in the first place?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I do get that question a lot, and I think I lost a little bit track of how I really got there. It's a funny one. I always, when I went to vet school, wanted to be a wildlife vet.
Okay.
So I didn't start off wanting oncology.
Yep.
But I then realized that doing wildlife actually is more management than really hands-on.
Okay.
And by accident, I went into an oncology rotation that I never wanted to do. And I got hooked.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed the line of work with the clients, the patients, the diseases. I mean, I kind of am attracted to how cancer works and how we can tackle it. But especially the conversations in the team, how the team comes together for those patients, I think is what really drew me to it and what kept me going through a whole residency program, I suppose.
Cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a dermatologist. So it's, detoured a fair bit. So I'm now solely focused on palliation and end-of-life care. I guess, I mean, as we continue sort of talking through this presentation, I think we'll both explain why we have been drawn to these areas and what keeps us in these areas of vet med.
Yeah, I think that's how we sort of met as well, isn't it? In that line of work, because I suppose a lot of what Onco does is palliative care, and I can't claim to say that I have all the knowledge. So there's absolute areas where, a service like Restropause, palliative care, and end-of-life care is so important to offer to clients these days. And I think that's sort of what got us talking and brought us to tonight, I suppose.
And I guess same on my end, it is very, very nice to know an oncologist. We were chatting before we started that I have a patient to refer to you. So it's, a very, very good friendship. Absolutely. Solidified now with our gin and tonics. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't get out of that again.
All right, beautiful. I think we've waffled. I think
waffled enough.
The team will be happy with our waffling. So we might move through now and introduce ourselves formally, if I can get my computer to work. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, so my name is Dr. Laura McGuffick, and I am one of the lead veterinarians for Restropause. I work here in Victoria, and I run the team in Melbourne. And yourself?
I'm Dr. Irina. I, at the moment, work in a private referral centre. I've been an oncologist for, I think, almost 8 years now. So I've seen a few, different patients, clients, and different pathways being taken for their pets. And I'm, really excited to be here tonight with Restropause to offer you guys all we may want to know about communication skills.
Yeah, I think this is... I love a lot of parts of this job, which does come as a surprise to a lot of people, given that I am solely in end-of-life care. But my favorite part is the education side of things and getting to connect and know our industry a little bit more. I meet a lot of amazing nurses, reception staff, vets, obviously. And I will say that becoming more involved with the industry and meeting people keeps me feeling very positive about where we're heading. And I think more positivity in this industry is what we need.
Yeah.
I also want to just quickly introduce Dr. Caitlin. She is lurking in the background and she has been responsible for getting this show on the road. She will be sort of collaborating all of your questions, which we will go through at the end. So we certainly would not be here today. I wouldn't know how to work this computer and set this screen up without her. So thank you again, Caitlin, for all the time that you've put into making this come true. Perfect. All right, let's get moving.
We'll get into it.
As I just said, we're going to do questions at the end. There is a little question box up the top. So yeah, please, it's your questions and your conversation with us that gives us the inspiration to create more content in the future. Knowing what you guys are interested in helps us, keep things relevant for everyone. So feel free to ask questions. We want this to be very conversational, as you probably gathered by our gin and tonics. We're here to just kind of have a chat and talk about areas of vet med that I don't think gets talked about enough. So feel free to ask questions. We'll go through at the end. And now it's time for our first poll. So we're going to try and keep things interactive. We do have a couple of polls throughout the presentation. And our first question for tonight is, who's here? So again, if you wouldn't mind letting us know, because it does help us tailor our future webinars and sort of the resources that we create through Rest Your Paws. Cool.
Yeah, so lots of answers coming in. Everyone is voting, which is nice.
73% have voted, which is great. Oh, we're kind of 50-50 now. Yeah. Last time we had a lot more vet nurses in attendance, but the vets and the vet nurses are tying at the moment, so that's good.
We've got students here as well, which is nice to see. I think, I don't know, it's nice to see that students are coming online, because we had a chat the other day about that we didn't really get taught about communication skills at vet school. I think I probably have nothing. And it's, I want to say, all acquired skills and looking what others have been doing. So I would have loved something like this.
And interestingly, when they have done studies, there hasn't been a lot of change in terms of introducing more end-of-life care education into our vet degrees over the last sort of 20 years. So it is very much what we're picking up along the way. So we do encourage you guys to kind of share what you know, because that's generally how people have access to this sort of information. Wonderful. All right, a little bit of an outline. It's hard sometimes to kind of create solid takeaways for this kind of talk and this kind of education. I hate the term soft skills, because I think it really underplays how important these skills are. But what we are trying to do is kind of give you some solid information to take away. Tips and tricks that we've picked up along the way that help us.
That could be handy tools for you guys, should you need them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I guess with the tailored edge towards palliation, hospice, oncology, obviously, and then euthanasia as well. And we're going to try and keep it quite relevant for everyone involved. As we just saw, there are a lot of vet nurses, there are a lot of students, sort of reception teams, as well as vets. So we want to keep it relevant for everyone. And of course, we'll have plenty of times for questions at the end.
Yeah, beautiful.
So why is this important?
Yeah, why is this important? I was talking about my client experience earlier today. I think what is hard, or I think when I started out, is to read the room. Who do you have in front of you, and what may this client's need be? Obviously, as a vet, we have an obligation to I like to talk about my list. I have to go through certain things. I'll get to that in a moment. And certainly we do need to talk about these options, but we can do it in a way that we can assure there is understanding, because only if there is understanding, then the owner ultimately will feel like they were empowered to make certain decisions, which is important for their satisfaction and ours ultimately as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love about my job is being able to connect with owners and not necessarily convince them to do something. And that's our role, is not to convince anyone to do anything, but to be able to connect with them and get them to sort of have genuine understanding of where you're coming from, and then be on board to go on that journey with you.
Yep.
I think that's probably what fills up my cup the most, is feeling that genuine connection with people and feeling that moment of, you know, I've really been able to help this person.
Yeah, and making the right decision for them, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I also feel like when you can connect better with people and be understanding of their situation, I find myself being a lot more forgiving, which has stopped me from sort of succumbing to that jadedness that I think can kind of haunt this industry as well. So I do think, whilst I am still a blunt person, I think I am a much happier person. I think I'm a more forgiving person by kind of deep diving and trying to really relate to owners and being a bit more forgiving of their mental state. Because I think that's one thing to appreciate, is that when we're having these difficult conversations with people, it's often on their worst day.
I agree. I mean, there might come in all sorts of emotional states into the room for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to something that, again, we're going to try and make this a little bit more solid for you. We love our acronyms here at Rest Your Paws. And our team worked very hard to sort of come up with something that was a little bit more catchy. Yeah. So we've come up with friends. The first one being foster connection. So really being able to build rapport and trust and genuine empathy. How do you go about that? You get a lot of referrals and have to meet people halfway through their journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the, I suppose, in a way, lucky situation that when I meet my clients, they most of the time have heard the diagnosis, so they've had a moment to let that sink in. In a way, it can also pose a bit of an issue because they will have had a chance to go onto Google search, and that may work against me. But anyhow, they most of the time know what's going on. So I try and sort of ease the conversation in with, essentially, that's the second point here, with listening to them. And I just start with simple things like how their journey was. Sometimes they travel 2 hours to get to me, so they're probably exhausted. Maybe they want a water. Maybe they'd like a tea, and just sort of sit there and have a bit of a chat about their journey, about what Fluffy is like, what they're enjoying about their dog or cat, and then sort of ease over, transition into, all right, we need to talk about this diagnosis. And at that point, they're usually, I want to say a majority, is a bit more relaxed, and they appreciate that sort of easing in. And we have a bit of a forum where we can more easily talk about things.
Yeah. The next sort of topic we came up with was really listening. I will be honest, I can struggle with this. I love to talk, which you will very much kind of appreciate through this presentation. So I am constantly reminding myself that one of the best ways to connect with people is actually to just let them speak. You know, if you think about, you know, when you're at a party or you're meeting a new person, if someone kind of asks a lot of questions and they let you talk and they seem really genuinely interested in what you have to say, versus someone that kind of has all of the answers, as kind of, you know, leading the conversation the entire time, you're much more likely to kind of walk away and be like, wow, I really like that person when they sort of seem to really want to listen to me and want to know what I had to say. So I think we do live in a world where everyone wants to have the loudest voice. And so, again, sometimes not saying too much at all and just kind of inviting conversation can go a long way in fostering that connection with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I sometimes find in that we will be the nervous nature of the client coming in with that, devastating diagnosis most of the time, is I have owners that come in, they're firing out questions, they just want to get it off their chest, and I'll sit there and listen to that, and then after that I go, right, let's sort this out, let's coordinate this. And then there are clients who are actually so nervous they can't talk, and that's the ones where I'll just try and have my little chit chat with them to sort of get them to relax a bit and pause for a second and then get into it.
Yeah, I think definitely when I'm going to a home, whether it's palliation, quality of life, or euthanasia, being sort of taking a step back and asking a few questions and getting them to talk and I guess come up with a little bit of a relationship first, you can see the anxiety kind of dissipate when they're like, okay, we're not just jumping into it, we're not just rushing into it. And that kind of goes hand in hand with inviting conversation. My first question when I sort of meet an owner for a palliative care appointment or a quality of life assessment is I'll say, you know, how has this journey been for you? Like I've read through all of the notes, but I'd like to know, like, how did all of this started? What had you going to the vet in the first place? Like, can we go back to the beginning of all of this? Because I think it then gives the owners a chance to sort of have you appreciate how long their journey's been.
I think that's a really good point, because I will have owners that sometimes say, oh, why are you asking me these questions? It's all in the history. And I was like, well, I would like to hear it from you, because I want to gauge what your journey of experience has been through this. And sometimes you will tell me things that are not written down in those notes, because they are medical notes that, of course, are important. But what I'm trying to gauge is, where do they want to go with their pet with this diagnosis? So that's actually where that's quite important, that they tell their story.
And I think you can, again, be a bit more forgiving and have a bit more patience with owners when you can appreciate, again, have they been to multiple vets already? Has this been like 6 months of ongoing sort of symptoms that they've already been living with? You know, I have a lot of owners where one of the most common things I come across is they'll tell me, look, for the last few months, I sleep in the living room with my pet now to make sure they are comfortable through the night. So again, you're not going to know how this owner's kind of routine has been affected and changed by caring for their pet until you ask these questions.
And sometimes they won't necessarily tell you that, because they almost feel guilty or failing their pet for not providing that care overnight. I think it's on us to make them, in a way, realize that they don't have to take these steps. There are other ways.
Yeah. And that comes into sort of easing their mind, so reassuring them that they're doing a good job, they've done a good job. I thank a lot of owners, especially when it comes to sort of palliative care. I thank them for approaching me early in the journey so that we can, give this pet the best retirement possible. So yeah, I think being able to kind of reassure them, ease their mind. Again, it's all laying the foundations of building a trusting relationship with someone, because you will reap the rewards as you move through this journey. If you put the time into kind of, again, connecting with them, normalizing their emotions, they feel like they've got a friend, and they're then going to be so much more trusting. And I think you have so much more room to guide their journey moving forward.
Especially if it gets into, I want to say, trickier territory. And that's the case when, let's say, the diagnosis has been mast cell tumor. Maybe in my case, we've gone for a treatment protocol and it stops working.
Yeah.
Or we're even we're getting to that later, but in a euthanasia territory. It's just easier to lead over to these conversations.
And detailing the process. I mean, this is very different depending on the situation, but I think we can fall into the trap of not necessarily educating owners on what's happening, but also what their kind of options are. So a good example of this is, I'll always kind of go into more of an in-depth kind of discussion of what the euthanasia procedure involves, how the pet's going to feel throughout it. But if we're still at the point where we're discussing euthanasia, I'll also then have the conversation of what natural death will look like based on the disease that pet's going through, or what a hospice-assisted death might look like. Because I think without that education and without sort of detailing, these pathways, you haven't empowered them to make the best decision.
Yeah, and in a way, that's the most owner's worst fear. It's like what comes at the end, whenever that comes, and that way they've got a bit of an understanding how that could be playing out for them, and that it can be quite a peaceful thing, and treatment options, I suppose.
Yeah. So we have sort of detailed here that this is every step of the way, even, you know, from the initial phone call. Again, I can't stress enough how much of a difference it makes when, you know, you're calling to discuss end of life care, or you're calling to book in a euthanasia, or you're calling to kind of organize a referral, to have someone on the other end of the line say, oh, thank you so much for calling us. It's such a hard phone call to have to make. You know, we're going to do everything we can to take care of you. You've got to sort of imagine that owners have probably spent weeks, you know, or at least days working themselves up to make these kind of calls. So to be the one on the end of the line thanking them for making the call and acknowledging that it's a difficult thing to do, you've already instilled trust. And I do think with these difficult conversations and these difficult consultations, you do need the entire clinic to be on board. Like you were saying you've just started at your new workplace, and it's so important that you have good nurses and a good team behind you as well.
Yeah, we're just trying to build a team essentially, and I've got the luxury in a way that we can design this from scratch. And it's not just important to have your, I suppose, experienced nurse. Of course, I want that. Makes my life easier. But I need someone who has very good people skills, who is going to make the client comfortable. A lot of, especially oncology nurses, will see consults themselves. They might see them in for the chemotherapy treatment, and they get to know them just as well as I do. But I think it starts even before the nurse. It starts with reception. I mean, for you guys, it's probably the phone call a lot of the time. For us, it's the reception team sitting up front and knowing what is walking through the door. Is that someone for a consult? Is that someone for maybe euthanasia? It'll be important for the receptionist to know what to expect as well.
I mean, that's we put as much kind of love and care into our nurses on the phone and our care team with Rest Your Paws, because they're our face, and they're the first people that, you know, our clients come into contact with. And the difference that they make is very apparent in all of the reviews that we have. We have just as much, if not more, love for the care team than, you know, the vets themselves that attend our pets, because the care team has gone through the journey with these owners as well, and they'll never meet them in person, but they've been that person who they've been able to lean on over the phone and have really sort of connected with. And I know, you know, from my own experience and you know, going through some health issues with my own family pets recently, the difference that it's made to have someone on the other end of the line sort of, you know, acknowledge that it's hard and you know, reassure me that they're going to do everything they can to take care of that family member and that pet, is like, it makes a massive difference. So I don't think we should undervalue the importance of those phone calls, and our nurses and our support team that are making those phone calls as well. This is available as a PDF for download as well. So if you just want something that you can sort of pin up on the wall, have near the phone, just as a bit of a reminder for you and your team, how much of an impact you make every step of the way. As I said, it takes a village.
It's a nice visual cue, isn't it?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, clear and collaborative education. I touched a little bit on that earlier when I said I think sometimes as vets we get into the habit of, I have a certain disease and I know there is a list 1 to 5 of potential treatment options and diagnostics. And I think sometimes we can get lost in we need to sort of tick some boxes. We need to spill this out. We need to tell the owners this is all that exists.
Get the information out.
Exactly. But the owner is going to sit back and look at you and stare and probably not really understand, or they come up with the question, what would you do? Because they want guidance of what you think is best. But at the same time, it is on us to find out what's the best for that family, for the family, for that pet, to really get that satisfying really journey at the end of the day out of it. So yes, by all means, we need to go through these treatment options, but we can do it in a way that the owner feels involved and ultimately empowered, that they have the decision making is their decision really at the end of the day.
And I think, again, I've been to a few consults recently with family members whose pets are going through a hard time. And I've sat there and nodded, and I've understood everything that the vet said. And then we've walked out of the consult room, and that family member has turned to me and gone, "So what's happening?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, we were not we're not picking up the same information." And I mean, partly that is I think my family knowing that they can then turn around and ask me to clarify. But I do think that we have to appreciate we have a bit of a power dynamic, especially as vets. It can be quite intimidating for an owner to sort of say, "I really don't understand what's going on. Can you kind of start at the beginning, or can you explain things a little bit more simply?" Like, that's a very hard thing to have to come out and say, particularly when you're already feeling quite anxious and overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think that's where it might be important, especially if you meet them for the first time. This will be the case for me most of the time, to sort of set the scene a little bit, to say, please do stop me if something is not understood. But also, if they don't do that, sort of every option I go through, I'll check back in. I was like, do you know what this means for you from a logistical point of view, from a financial point of view, for your pet? Can we actually do these things with your pet? Is that going to work? So it's, I think, for us important to check back in there.
Yeah, definitely. Giving them sort of permission to sort of stop you as you're going along. But also, I start my conversations, especially if, again, it's more of a palliative care assessment or a quality of life assessment, or if they've had a lot of workup, especially if they've been to referral as well as their GP, I will ask them, what is your understanding of Fluffy's kind of situation? What's your understanding of what's going on, with his little body and where he's at and what his prognosis looks like? And then I just let them talk, because, again, their understanding and what's written on their, handout that they got given when they left the vet is probably two very different things as well.
But that's a good point as well. That's what I try and do. Obviously do a bit of we talk through things in the consult, and then I summarize back, but I also say they don't have to take notes when they're in the room with me. Obviously some kind of want to, because they're maybe nervous or that's just what they want to do. But I do say to them, look, you can really listen and have a conversation with me, because I will write you a full summary report that I either email to you, or depending on time, I print it out and give it to them, so that they have a chance to look at it at home, but also discuss it with their family members who will, I want to guarantee you, when it comes to cancer, have an opinion. And they can just go, here you go, read this summary, and then we can chat. And I usually send the same summary to the regular vet as well, so that the regular vet will often have a much longer standing relationship with the owner, and they will understandably trust that vet much more than me, at least in the initial phase. So they will want to discuss that. And then they have the option to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the summarizing, and we do the same thing if we have a quality of life for a new on board. I'll say, this is just a chat. I want to know, what's his life look like? What does he love doing? I want to know what's important to you. And then I'm going to send you through an email. And in that email, I'm going to put down my understanding of what our goals of care are, what's most important to you, and what you want to achieve sort of moving forward. And as we progress, those goals of care may change. But it's a good way to sort of show them, we can just, we're friends, we're building rapport, and then I can kind of come back and send that summary to you. And again, this all takes time, which I think is why, as we move through this presentation, we're really going to be advocating for nurses and support staff to be playing a more active role in kind of continuing this ongoing relationship, being able to do that follow-up care and being able to check in with these owners, because as we said before, our support staff and our nurses are just as much a part of the journey for these long-term patients as the vets themselves.
And I think it goes towards really showing your open and honest interest for them in their pet, in that really becomes apparent when we do check back in that it wasn't just another consult they paid for and got forgotten about. So I think if we do make that effort to check back in, they will love you for that. It's great. And then you can find out, have they made a decision or are there more questions? So I think that's a good way of keeping that connection going.
We have put here as well referral and team collaboration. I think we're a good example of that referral and team collaboration with one another. You know, a lot of owners, their pets are their babies, and especially towards the end of life or when they're facing something like cancer, they want to feel empowered and they want to feel like they're doing everything, you know. So offering them and having that discussion with them about things like hydrotherapy, acupuncture, you know, even sort of Chinese herbal medicine, that kind of thing. It might not be something that you yourselves offer or you yourselves are 100% sort of across, but there are plenty of other kind of vets out there that are. And your patient and your owner in particular is going to appreciate kind of having a team invested and a team on board. You know, you're a referral service. Rest Your Paws very much sees ourselves as being a palliative care arm. So we're an extension of your clinics in terms of being able to help. It's not about sort of taking over care. It's more about spreading that care out so that, again, they're getting support from multiple different angles. It also gives you more control over who these owners are going to, because as we know, there are plenty of people taking advantage and not necessarily having the skills and the education to provide really good care. So it's much better that we start arming ourselves with, you know, good people to refer to if owners, again, want to feel like they're pursuing every lead and they're doing everything they can.
Yeah, I think it's a more and more well-recognized model in human medicine as well. So I've seen when I started sort of looking out to building my team and how the day could run as smoothly as possible, I tried to lean on what do human hospital do in terms of their cancer units, their hospice units, and they're recognizing more and more it's a team. So it's not just the medical oncologist. Yes, of course, there's the surgeon, but there's also like a physiotherapy and rehab team, a wellness team around this. So I think we cannot underestimate that. That's absolutely up and coming.
Definitely. Cool. Comfort versus cure. So sort of on that note, in terms of, I guess, shifting and following human medicine models, palliative and hospice care in Australia is very much kind of up and coming. You know, there's been a lot more kind of development in that area, even in the last kind of 5 years. So I guess the sort of point of this slide is that when we are having these kind of discussions with owners, whether they're sort of at the beginning of their end-of-life care journey with yourself, whether they're sort of going through the chemotherapy, whether they're with me having those quality of life assessments, it's about shifting that owner mindset and giving them permission to focus more on comfort versus cure, because we very much live in a society that pushes fix it. We have that fix it mentality, and a lot of the times not going the nth degree can lead to the owner feeling very guilty and feeling like they gave up on their pet. So I think it goes a long way in having those conversations and giving owners permission to really focus on what brings that pet joy. What do we want to, you know, focusing on their emotional and social well-being, not just their physical well-being, as well as I think a big one for me, and this goes hand in hand with when we're talking about oncology and whether we go ahead with chemotherapy and things like that, patient personality comes into it a lot as well.
Absolutely, yeah, because a lot of things are possible, absolutely, and especially when I go through my treatment list, there's numerous things, but it is really to find what treatment plan does actually work for that pet. And the owner will have likely done their Google search and found this is the gold standard, and they already know that may not be that feasible for their pet, but they're guilt tripping themselves that may not be possible. And I think it's sort of for us to normalize that, yes, that is the gold standard, but there are other options, and that may very well be the number one treatment choice for this pet, to just say that that's okay.
And I think a really big thing that I personally would like to see us all doing a lot more is taking a step back and looking at that patient as a whole. So when we are getting those, those diagnoses that, things aren't operable, or maybe the owners don't want to go ahead with, things like chemotherapy or invasive surgery, that sort of thing, we are then turning, rather than, I guess, having the owners then feel hopeless or like they've maybe sort of failed that patient, we turn around and we say, okay, what can we do to make their quality of life as good as it can be? It might not be for a very long time, but let's look at this patient. They're an older animal. They've obviously got arthritis. Let's step up the arthritis management. We know that maybe we can't kind of stop or slow down that cancer or chronic disease, whatever it may be. But
we can make it comfortable.
We can make them comfortable, and we can give them, some really good days, which again comes down to talking to the owner about what their goals of care are and what matters to that patient as well.
Exactly. Even for some tumor types, even if we don't pull that specific chemo drug off the shelf, there may be other options. And that is, yes, pain relief, but I'm just thinking mast cell tumors, there's so much more we can do. These dogs should receive antihistamines, for example, and maybe low-dose steroids, and that will do something against these tumors and stop potential detrimental effects from these tumors. So there is a whole other sort of pathway they can go down from, where they don't have to have the regular visits to me or you, but they still have these things that they can do.
Yeah, definitely. And again, you even when you come across owners that may not want to go ahead with regular visits or medications, things like that, are they on board with things that are a bit more alternative, like CBD oil? Are they more on board with physiotherapy and hydrotherapy? I think there's enough out there that we can kind of tailor things to most owners now. It's just kind of recognizing that they may not go ahead with the treatment plan that is gold standard, but it doesn't mean that we kind of go, well, we've done all we can, sort of thing. I think there's always room for more to prioritize comfort. We've got here sort of recognizing owner limitations, something that I sort of say to, when I'm educating, but also to owners, at any point when that time, that financial, physical, or emotional budget for an owner is exhausted, it is reasonable to consider euthanasia. And that's sort of, it's a hard conversation to bring up, but I think it's really important to sort of use those words and have that conversation with owners about their budgets. How much time do they have to spend at home with the pet? Before I go ahead and tell them all these different things they can do, hydrotherapy and physio and all the rest of it, do they have the time and
the finances
for it as well, and the physical limitations as well, particularly for older owners? Can they, if their mobility themselves isn't great, are they able to really kind of assist with their pet's mobility? So again, this is all kind of part of that initial information gathering,
initial conversation where that really will help you now to sort of help them decide what the best way forward is. I had a chat with a client the other day who has to climb up multiple flights of stairs and way over his 60s. They can't carry their dog up and down there. It's just not possible. And that person shouldn't be feeling any guilty for not being able to provide that.
And I think you make that safe space so that they feel comfortable to kind of confide that to you as well.
No one seems to know this, but Amazon actually has a $50 million fund that they have to pay out every single month. And here's how you can get a cut of it. My name is Charlotte Mickelson, and we help everyday people grow their income with this one simple method. And we're pretty darn good at it. Our company, Publishing.com, was named the 19th fastest growing company in America. And the only reason we're so successful is because of the success that we've created for others. And I'll tell you why our method works so much better than anything else you might have tried. It's because starting a business is not the best way for regular people to make more money. And that's what everyone gets wrong. Starting and running a business is hard. It's expensive, it takes a long time, and it requires skills and experience that most people don't have. Instead, we help you plug into Amazon and the $500 billion a year business they've already built. Now, the way we do it is completely different from anything you've seen before. We don't show you how to buy and sell physical products on Amazon like everybody else. The way we plug into Amazon is through this app on our phone called Audible, which most people don't know is one of Amazon's apps. And using this app, I showed my mom how to get paid checks like this from Amazon every month. Look, this didn't make her rich, so if that's what you're looking for, this isn't for you. But if you want an extra income stream on top of what you're currently making that pays you every month like clockwork, that we can help you with. So if you want to see how we do it, my husband Christian, who discovered this method, just finished making the best video training he's ever made, walking you through step by step exactly how to set up this Audible app strategy for yourself. And the best part is it's 100% free. There is absolutely no risk in clicking on this video and seeing for yourself how this is working for so many people. So just hit the button on your screen, put in your email, and you'll have instant access to this free training which reveals everything. Steven here says, I'm so glad I didn't skip that YouTube ad because my last check from Audible was life-changing. And here's what others have to say about it.
This past month, I reached $8,000 in revenue, and I'm on track to reach $10,000 in revenue this month.
I've been able to go from 0 to 22K in 7 months. And of course, this completely changed my life.
I do this on a part-time basis, about 5 to 10 hours a week. I earn about $40,000 a year. There's no other job that pays with that little time.
So to get free access to the training, all you need to do is tap the button on your screen, put in your email, and you can watch it right away. And look, if you're skeptical that what I'm sharing here is BS, or you think that those were paid actors, whatever you're thinking, that's fine. I get it. But that's exactly why we put together this free training for you, so that you can see for yourself what it's all about first. So you can see how it works, exactly how we do it, completely for free. Now, we wouldn't be the 19th fastest growing company in America if our stuff wasn't good. So the most important thing that you can do right now is don't waste any more time. Hit the link, go through the free training, see our 3-step process to making money with Audible, and get results. So again, my name is Charlotte Mickelson, and I'll see you on the training.
Again, leading us on to the topic of euthanasia then, and it's not always easy for us to bring up. I've had a lot of vets sort of say that they struggle in particular when, there's no one thing kind of pushing them towards euthanasia. There isn't a cancer or, like a chronic disease that's really kind of come along and hindered them physically, but the quality of life in general, those physical, emotional, social buckets, they're all kind of dwindling. How do you kind of broach that conversation of, is this pet's life worth living?
Yeah, I suppose for me, as you say, it's in a way easier, or I want to say the owners, when they walk in the consult room, it'll be on their mind because they've heard the big word cancer. Yeah. So it's definitely on their mind, whether they're saying that or not. So I make it actually part of the first consult to go through the treatment options, discuss the prognosis, what we can maybe achieve with certain things, and then essentially say, a lot of the time I say, I'm really sorry what I'm about to mention, but there is also the option for euthanasia and not do any of these things. And that might be something that we need to think about now already, in a few days or weeks, or it's months away. Yeah. And that we sort of start a conversation around what are the 3 to 5 things in the day that your dog or cat enjoys doing. And I try and say, you have a Labrador, it's not the food. It's going to do that to the very last minute. Really pick things like greeting them at the door, ball play, these things. Do they do that every day? And I had an owner this week who's like, he's actually not been doing this for weeks. He's eating. It's like, he's a Labrador. He is eating, but he didn't do any of the other things anymore. Yeah. And that dog actually just turned out was in a significant amount of pain.
Yeah, okay.
So some good old pain meds now. I'm hopefully bringing this back to life. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. I think you mentioned there sort of, you acknowledge that it's a hard conversation to go into, and that's sort of why we have up the top there, ask for permission. So if I'm at a palliative care consult or a quality of life, consult, I will ask the owners, we've sort of had the discussion about how he's feeling. Are you feeling comfortable, or is it okay if we do discuss euthanasia now? Is it something that you've been through before? Is it, what's your experience with it, and your kind of understanding of what happens? So again, I'm asking permission. I'm acknowledging that it's a hard conversation to have. I've usually done the groundwork to kind of build up a bit of trust and rapport and make those owners feel safe to have this conversation with me. And sort of have them in a space where there is no judgment as well. Learning about their previous experience with euthanasia is so important. We've got a lot of people coming through now, people my age who it's their first adult pet, so they've been through a lot. They've usually been through their 20s with this pet. Maybe they got it when they were 18. So that it's been through life with them. And yes, they've euthanized sort of family pets, but it wasn't a decision that they were actively involved in. And interestingly enough, we are living with one of the first sort of, on average, death-free generations, meaning that the loss of their pet is going to be potentially one of the most difficult things that they've ever been through. So again, it's natural to want to feel an aversion to talk about death and grief, but I think it's so much more important that we kind of tackle this with empathy, but we also are the ones who are gently bringing it up and having that discussion, because if it's hard for us to bring up, you've got to imagine how hard it is for these pet parents to be even considering. We had a market once for Restropause, and owners, they would come over and they'd sort of look at our brochures, and you could tell they wanted to take one, and then they'd say, I feel so guilty for even approaching you. I feel so guilty for even looking at this. And then once we kind of lured them in and we had that conversation, then they, they got something out of it, and they learned a lot, and they were, feeling good. But that's kind of that moment made me really appreciate how that owners feel guilty to even be thinking about it for their pet, even when they know that they can't live forever, and that's just pets going through old age, not pets that are going sort of through cancer. Absolutely. And when they know it's imminent.
I think that's where it's good that we sort of lead that conversation, so to make it easier for the owner to bring it up, or maybe that's even where they wanted the discussion to go. They just needed someone to take the first step and say that is okay to think this.
You're taking a big weight off their shoulders by being the first ones to sort of bring it up. If they shut down the conversation, then again, you say, okay, I completely understand it. It's really hard to think about. I just want you to know that I'm here whenever you feel comfortable enough to discuss it. If you want to do it over a telehealth from home where you're feeling more comfortable, then we can do that. It's also really important to not only bring this up early in the piece, but to be providing sort of support and resources for these owners to go home with, because usually that it's not just them making the decision. They've got partners, they've got family, they've got children, even family overseas that they're going to have these phone calls with and sort of deliberate over. And it helps a lot to have some solid information about pain scoring, quality of life, that sort of thing for them to go through.
It's really nice to lean on that information, have guidance. Absolutely.
I think it makes it feel more objective than subjective, which again makes them feel, more like this is the best thing. This is the, next logical step to enable their pet to have comfort again, rather than this is like a choice almost. And when they've done surveys, they have asked owners and they've said, look, we wish more vets and more clinics had these resources available. They also want grief counselling resources available more readily, because where else are they going to go?
Yeah, and I think we probably all know as vets and nurses how hard it can be on a busy schedule to really try and do the best for this client who's just saying goodbye, and it's like, I have to see my next consult. It's hard for us to do that well, I think.
I think it makes us feel a lot better as well if we know that we're at least giving these people sort of resources to go home with. Like it's very hard on us emotionally to witness another person struggling, whether it's before the decision to euthanize or afterwards. it feels, I think, a lot better to know that you've given them a resource, you've given them someone to reach out to, and you're not having to take all of this burden on by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had a lot of people ask in our last webinar how we go about discussing payment and aftercare, because when it comes to difficult conversations, it doesn't get much more awkward or difficult than this.
Yeah, than asking for payment and cremation and all that.
I want to formally apologize for always making my nurses do this part and always skimping out on this when I was in clinic. So sorry. Okay, so how to go about this? I mean, again, we live in the age of technology where I think that we really should be getting used to emailing this information out ahead of time. I mean, where we can give owners the option to sign consent, to make payment, to make their aftercare plans when they are in the comfort of their own home, you know, not having to sort of make those decisions in clinic.
Yeah, I think if it's something that they are looking to do in 1 to 2 days and they're booking this in, I think it's a good opportunity for them to go through it in their own time and do it rather than do it in the clinic setting. It will come to that as well, that it happens in the clinic. And there are sort of, I mean, people, different clinics start having special rooms for it where they can duck out a little bit easier, not go through reception. So there are still ways of handling this as delicately as possible.
I think, yes, obviously when you have to do the consent and the payment in the clinic, if you haven't sort of had the opportunity to organize it beforehand, you want to lead with client voice. And what we mean by client voice is sort of saying, look, I know this is really hard to sort of talk about and to have to consider, but we want to make sure that we have all of your wishes finalized so we can take the best care of Fluffy. I'd really like it if we could sort of discuss aftercare now, if it's okay with you, or if we could collect payment now so that we can then turn all of our attention towards comforting you and Fluffy and sort of, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is you're leading with intent. So I'm explaining, I know this is an awkward conversation to have. I know that you're feeling awful right now. This is an awful position to be in. We have to go through this. So let's go through this now so that I can give you all the attention and love sort of moving forward and we can just get this out of the way. So, you know, you might say, look, a lot of families find it easier to be able to kind of go through this and do all of this ahead of time. The last thing we want is to have to do this sort of after the consult. I'd love it if we can just kind of get this out of the way and then, you know, you're able to kind of leave afterwards without having to come back through reception. You know, would that be okay with you? And of course, when you've explained it in that way, they're going to say yes, because it's obvious that you're trying to spare them from an even more awkward, awful situation of then having to do payment and clarify wishes when they're in that distraught state. So I think if you, and especially if you're at the point, you know, whether there's been a breakdown of communication, but you're now having to kind of take payment after the euthanasia, that's when you really dig into that kind of that empathy and that acknowledgement of, again, like, I am so sorry, you know, I again, thank you so much for trusting us with Fluffy's care. We know he meant the absolute world to you. I know this is hard to go through right now, but I'd just like to clarify a few things so that I know that we've got your wishes confirmed, and I then know that we can have Fluffy home to you as soon as possible, you know, if it's cremation that they're going for.
I think it's also good to reiterate the fact that you're still going to look after this dog just as well now that he or she is passed. And whether that's me and the nurse in the room or just myself, it's just important to sort of say that, and that just little things, how you handle the animal while they're still in the room as well, to just do that.
Exactly. I think signposting your intent, but also, as you said, you're handling that pet almost with reverence. You know, you're slow, you're gentle, because that's all part of the experience. And when you have emotional people, they're hyperfixating on little things, and you don't. You want the entire euthanasia experience to be as gentle as it possibly can, and that really comes down to how we handle them afterwards as well. But again, if we can make these kind of arrangements beforehand and have this conversation beforehand, something that I sort of really lean into is you are giving the owner the ability to personalize their pet's farewell. but only if you're having that conversation ahead of time.
Yeah.
So again, we're asking you guys to do a lot, and sometimes, you know, I've done some lectures, especially to younger nurses and vets, where they've said, look, I don't see myself as being a particularly empathetic person. Like, how do I go about this? I think you got to fake it till you make it. I think empathy isn't something that we're just born with. It's something that you work on.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that you might just have a few lines that you say. You know, you might just sort of, when the family's leaving, again, you say, thank you so much for trusting us with Fluffy's care. We know he meant the world to you, and we're really kind of grateful that you chose us to be a part of this for you. So again, have some lines that you can say that you get really comfortable with saying, because then it's going to come across as authentic, which it is. I think we all genuinely want to show up for other people. That's why we're in this industry. But it's important to look after ourselves as well. When I'm dealing with an emotional client, you had emotional clients today, actually.
I know, I had fighting in the room.
Yeah. How did you center yourself when that was going on?
Yeah, it was hard because it was a telehealth consult as well.
Okay.
So I think having them not in the room is I don't know. I thought it was hard, and I just let them speak their piece to each other. Essentially, I think they got actually a little bit rude to each other. But I just tried to bring the conversation back to the dog and say, look, you know, they had completely opposing opinions as to where they want to go. I was like, both of those pathways, it sounds like are possible from the way they described their dog to me. They were financially possible, they were logistically possible, but doesn't undo the fact that their opinions were completely opposing. Yeah. And I was like, so it's just important for both of parties to recognize that there isn't a right pathway. We can go back down both of those. We can do one over the other, one after the other. So we just need to really sort of see, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? And why do you see this is better than the other? And sort of calm down and sort of listen to the other person. If I felt like a counselor in the room, really listening to the people. So why do you think, why do you need to do this?
Yeah.
And why does this person need to do this and is so opposed to that? One was adamant chemo was the worst thing in the world. And yeah, in a few percent of dogs, it is as bad as in people. But it's sort of, at least I could educate there in that way that it isn't as horrible as it is in people.
Yeah.
So then that was a little eye-opening for one person. Not sure they'll pursue that. But I think it's just to sort of come back to listening level on both sides and sort of stop attacking each other in the room.
Yeah. And I think it's, again, really important to, when you are facing that kind of thing, like, you're centering yourself, you're being mindful of you know, your body language and your tone, especially your tone when you're on the phone, because it something that again is really cool is people tend to want to mirror each other. So again, meaning that if you are calm and you are speaking in a really nice sort of soft and gentle voice, you'll find your ability to kind of bring people to your level is like, people do it, you know, without even realizing it. They want to kind of emulate, you know, the other person. So being sort of, again, centering yourself and being mindful of what you can control, which is yourself, will then impact other people. Normalizing the pain and suffering. So again, through a companioning approach, again, you may not agree with how people are going about things, but again, if you've done the work and you've kind of gotten to know these people, you can at least empathize with them. You may not agree with them, but I think you can kind of understand them enough to kind of normalize what they're going through and appreciate the sort of the pain and the suffering. So you can show up as a companion, you can show up as a friend without necessarily 100% advocating for the route that they're going down.
And I think a lot is this acknowledging of their emotions, because may that be the couple today fighting in the room, or it's a single owner that comes in and just has a hard time with certain emotions or adamant that this treatment is the way forward and not another. It's just acknowledging that that's the way they feel, and to sort of dig a little deeper as to why do they feel that. Maybe they had a family member go through something and it was terrible. It's, I think, probably when you guys ask about if they have been through a euthanasia before that went horribly wrong, and they're terrified of that happening again. So sometimes I just have to be as blunt and ask, why do you actually feel this way? What is the barrier there? And can we overcome that?
Yeah.
Or is that something that it's just a no? And for some clients, it'll just be a no.
I think we've got here sort of recognizing your own need to sort of release and complete that stress cycle. I think one of the reasons why our industry is so prone to compassion fatigue and burnout is because we don't allow ourselves to have that stress release at the time and when we need it. So whether that's sort of if you've had a stressful consult, if you've just gone through a euthanasia, you deserve to be able to go out and make a cup of tea or just have a little walk around the building and get some fresh air, because again, it's allowing yourself and kind of doing right by your own body and sort of saying that, yeah, that was stressful, and you know, I can tell myself everything's fine, but I'm full of adrenaline and cortisol right now, and I know it's not fine. So I think being able to kind of stop and give yourself permission to be like, that was a lot. I'm going to have a cup of tea now, and maybe I'm going to need to like go for a run tonight, or I'm going to need to have like a debrief on the phone when I'm driving home. I'm going to have a gin and tonic. You know, I had a 3-hour euthanasia last night. So I put on some sad music and I had a cry just because I needed that release, because I was like, it is 11 o'clock at night. I am really tired. I worked really hard to kind of connect and get the best outcome for that family. So I'm just, put on some sad songs and have a little cry. And I felt a lot better for it.
Yeah, I think that's where the team is also nice, because the team doesn't just exist to help your client. Obviously it does, but it is also there to help you. Again, I have the luxury that I have a very small team that all sort of obviously specialize in the same area. But if I'm not quite ready for that next consult yet, the nurse is going to start that. And most owners, I want to say, will understand what has just happened before, because, well, again, for me, that pet also has cancer, so they may be aware that that might be coming their way at some point. So most of them are very, very understanding there, and sometimes the nurse just goes in and has a bit of a chit chat.
And I think, look, at the end of the day, we have to respect our own boundaries. I think that's why we really need to be working with teams, so that we can all kind of share the load. But we also need to, again, going back to being able to give owners resources and handouts, respecting different learning styles as well, so that they can go home and have these conversations as well. And like, there's nothing worse than if you're trapped on the phone and they're going around and around in circles deliberating. You don't need to get stuck in their whirlpool of decision making. So sort of draw your barrier politely and sort of say, look, this is a lot for anyone to take on. You know, we've been through a few options now, or I have some really good resources that I want to email through to you. And I think it's best that you maybe kind of go through them, have a read, and then when you know, tomorrow or when you next come in for your recheck, we can go through it all. So it's a good way, again, to kind of put the stop brakes on, because you're not on tap. We've got finite resources. You will burn out. You'll also get really irritated if you're constantly being kind of nipped at. So again, just some practical tips to take home, really sort of using visual aids and resources. Again, we've got lots of resources on our website. You guys are more than welcome to sort of reach out to and use. We made them to try and make life easier for everyone in this industry. Follow-up communication.
I think that's a good one that really maybe even the nurses and the support staff can 100% do. I'll do my best. I think that's sort of what's come out for me when we've created this. These follow-up conversations, especially after that initial consult, because when you have your busy day, it just becomes I go to my next consult, and you forget about the ones you've had last week, and then realize a month later they never checked back in again. To sort of keep that accountability up, And I think that's where the support staff can be really, really helpful to just check in.
Because all of this hard work goes down the drain if we don't have this follow-up. You know, you put in the effort to kind of build this connection. The best way to kind of solidify it is have that follow-up phone call. But again, it takes a village. And I know for a fact that nurses are desperate in wanting to be able to create more positive end-of-life journeys for their owners. We're constantly getting asked to do lunch and learns because, again, we all want to show up better for our owners. And I think kind of leaning on our support staff and empowering the different members of our teams to be able to show up for their owners so that they then get the gratitude from those owners as well. Like that we want to feel like we're caring and we're doing our best for people and for our patients.
Yeah.
So we need to then give everyone in the team the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, second poll for the night. We do want to know how you guys found out about this webinar because this will, again, kind of help us to better target what we're doing and be able to kind of invite more people in the future to join us in our gin and tonic chit-chat session. So,
exactly.
thank you for answering because, yeah, again, it helps us to kind of better tailor this in the future.
Yeah, it's pretty even.
Yeah.
Amongst the options here.
Beautiful. I'll give you just a few more seconds to answer, guys. Thank you. We did pretty well.
Yeah.
Timing-wise, I mean,
Yeah,
we're like,
timing-wise, yeah.
it's a constant, like, constant stress of like, are we, how much more chit-chat can we fit into this? Okay, cool. I think that's pretty good. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Now, again, on the note of sort of continuing education, we do now have our Vet Hub live on Rest Your Paws. So as I said, you can access this to get into our resources. Our team has now put our previous newsletters on there as well. So hopefully you guys will find something useful there for either your team, for your clients. And we've got a few of the organizations that we're working with at the moment just listed down there. As I said earlier, my favorite part of this job is education. So yeah, hopefully we get to continue doing that. Last thing, again, I know I keep hyping on about sort of making more content for you all. What would you like to see, you know, as future webinar topics? Because I can easily find more people to sit down and drink gin with me. So we are very keen to do more webinars in the future. What interests you? What do you want to know more about? So advanced euthanasia techniques. So that would primarily be sort of talking about intra-organ techniques, which is not something I did in GP. It was only, you know, once kind of working with Rest Your Paws did I realize that there's a lot of different ways that we can humanely euthanize pets. Compassion fatigue and taking care of yourself is a topic that I love, essentially, because I think the more we learn about it, the more like self-awareness we have and the more barriers we can put in place for sort of burnout and compassion fatigue. Quality of life assessments, again, how do we get more of the team involved in end-of-life care? Counseling clients that are struggling to let go.
Yeah, that's a good one for me. I like that.
You like that one? All right, we'll get you back for another gin and tonic.
I might have to just listen in and find out how that's done.
And humane euthanasia for exotics and wildlife. We do, you know, it is a project in the background. We would like to get some good sedation protocols out for some exotics and wildlife. We have just done our most recent updated sedation protocols, so we'll be trying to get that out to your clinics. All right, what was the, oh no, we've got a tie. All right, well, great. There's lots of webinars coming up then, since we've got a three-way tie.
Yeah.
We have a feedback form again, so do the feedback form, and Caitlin and Tim, who are in the background, will be very happy because, again, we want to know how this has gone for you and what you've enjoyed, what we can do better in the future. How to get your CPD points. If you have any questions, you can shoot us through an email, guys, but it's much the same way as last time. You just shoot us through an email if you have any issues. Q&A. Okay, how do we
Right.
do? We did pretty well. We're like
Yeah.
5 minutes behind
It's like,
time.
who's still alive?
Yeah. We did pretty good.
Cool.
All right. Now I'll have to see if I'm able to see the questions.
All right.
Second.
Okay.
All right,
So
guys.
here?
Up here. Beautiful.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you.
To on the right.
These ones here. Sweet. Oh, okay, cool.
Nice
So,
one.
first question is, what is palliative care? And that's not the first time I've been asked this question. Palliative care is essentially comfort care. So palliative care can very much be done alongside curative care.
Yeah, I want to say actually a lot of what I do is palliative care. Unless I am managing to cure a cancer, all of it is palliative care, because all we're doing is keep the animal comfortable, maintain a quality of life for as long as possible.
Yeah.
So that's often what clients especially don't realize when they see me. And when I use the word palliative care, there immediately is a little bit of a panic going on there, because they think I'm thinking euthanasia. So it's a bit about educating that terminology, what that really means.
Yeah, I guess that's how I sort of advertise it. Palliative care, from my point of view, is essentially, maintaining that pet's physical, emotional, and social well-being, which often comes down to really good pain relief, but often we're taking care of their anxiety, we're taking care of like nausea and dietary issues. So essentially I'm trying to kind of support their body system as a whole, so that they can actually still get out and enjoy life for however long that may be, I guess. All right, beautiful.
Don't know what green and red mean.
Recent. Oh, cute. I'm a recent graduate. Is it okay to cry when talking to a client? This is like honestly one of the biggest fears that I think a lot of new grads, and when we sort of go in and we lecture for universities, it's their biggest fear. It is 100% okay to cry in front of owners. I don't recommend sobbing. You don't want to kind of draw the attention away from what's happening. But I mean, it's a way of kind of displaying genuine empathy, right? Like, and I've some of us are more prone to crying than others. I know we have some members on our team who, again, now they must have done sort of hundreds of euthanasias, and they still regularly cry during the euthanasias, because that's kind of their default, and when they see other people very sort of emotional and upset, that they mirror them. And I think that's absolutely fine, and a lot of the times people just sort of go, you know what, that person really does care, and this isn't just,
it's a little bit your own release as well. If you spend months or weeks with the client and the pet, then you are also sort of at the sort of exhausted point and very, very sad point that it's now come to this.
Yeah, it's about having that stress release, I think.
Absolutely fine, yeah.
What else do we have? Do we have a quality of life type questionnaire?
I do.
Sorry, the questions are kind of changing. To complete the stress cycle, are there any small body things I can do to release stress quickly?
Deep breaths.
What do you do? Breaths? I'm in the car a lot, so I'll confess, if I'm sort of driving, I'll turn the music up loud and I'll have a little scream, and it makes me feel really good.
I usually go outside to the nurse and have a bit of a venting.
Yeah, okay, just to kind of get that off your chest as well.
Like how awful, how this just went down. I just need to like talk it. I just need to talk at someone.
I know an audiobook I listened to recently really does recommend the clenching, like clenching fists, kind of clenching every kind of muscle in the body, and then kind of slowly letting go and taking note of yourself letting go. So I think that's a really good one. Okay.
The quality of life questionnaire now.
Yeah, let's have a look. Do you have a quality of life type questionnaire for owners who are opting to euthanize based on behavioral issues?
I do have a general quality of life questionnaire. I use that for actually one main reason. I let them fill it out when I first meet them, and then I let them fill it out a few months later, and again, and then I let them fill it out when they struggle with, is euthanasia the way to go? And what I want them to see is when they look at this questionnaire, compared to the questionnaire where I thought the animal was doing really, really well, so that they see in their own answers, how their pet's changed.
I think directed for behavioral issues.
Yeah.
I think we have when we talk about quality of life, again, we break it down into the physical, emotional, and social buckets. And I think a lot of the social and emotional kind of questions in there will give the owners a good understanding of whether or not that pet's mental health is okay because of its behavioral or anxiety concerns. So that is what I tend to focus on. Again, it's sort of recognizing that, you know, when the behavioral issues are trainable, or when medication can help, or are we at a point where that dog doesn't or cat doesn't have quality of life because their emotional and social well-being is so compromised. And again, it's hard because often their physical health is good, but it's getting the owners to appreciate that there is so much more to life than just good, than just being physically comfortable as well. Does tense matter when, as in like past tense, future tense, matter when talking to clients, as in like saying, I know you love them versus love them, they were a great pet? That's a good one, and I've thought about that myself. I, especially when I'm at a euthanasia and I have just put them to sleep, I avoid past tense. So I still talk about sort of, like I know you love them so much, and you've got so many great memories with them, or they're such a beautiful boy. Because I'm often still, when I'm sitting with the owners and I'm doing mementos, I'm still kind of,
you're in the room.
I'm still in the room. I'm still kind of petting the pet, and I'm being very sort of soft and gentle. For me, it feels kind of almost a little bit disrespectful to straight away kind of turn to past tense, like well, he's gone. So out of respect, I still tend to refer to them in present tense, because again, that love doesn't just
I'm not sure whether every owner would necessarily pick up on that, but I think sort of naturally for me, I'll keep it in the present tense as well. I just had to think about that because I wasn't kind of subconsciously aware of this. But going through this in my own mind, I believe I do present tense as well.
I think your tone is more important than your tense. Again, owners are going to forgive and often not even remember a lot of what you say, but they are going to remember how you made them feel. So I think it's your body language and your tone that's more important than sort of the little things like tense.
In a way, I suppose. And they'll still love this pet even if it's gone, so it doesn't have to be past tense.
Do you have any tips with writing sympathy cards? Yes, I guess I just keep it sort of short and sweet and honest. Again, thank you so much for trusting us with Fluffy's care. We know he meant the world to you. We're going to miss his little face coming through the door, or we're going to miss, X, Y, Z.
I'll try and put a little truth in there that sets it apart a little bit. So if it's a dog, I always put the feet on the counter or something when they walk into reception. We'll mention that. And it's often, I have to say, more something that reception or the nurses will have more in their mind. It's like, oh, you always used to do this, and the owner is aware that that pet used to do that. It's kind of nice mentioning that in there. It's just not, doesn't feel like you've written a generic sympathy card. There is actually a little sort of fact about their pet in there.
This is a good one, actually.
How would you phrase asking a client about their time, financial and physical limitations without sounding judgmental or making them uncomfortable? I think, to be honest, I just ask them. I think I'm quite blunt. What I usually do is when I describe a treatment, I sort of say, look, if we do this chemotherapy, then Fluffy is going to be with us for about 3 hours. It's going to take that long in the day. This is what the cost is going to be. So I just blurt it out like that. And then I sort of go in. It's like, well, do you think it'll be possible for you to come to us every week, every 2 weeks? What do you think is feasible? So I think I lead with, this is just the fact how this treatment's going to go down. This is what we need to be facilitating. And then I'll try and sort of turn this around. I was like, how do you think we could make this work for all of us? So I think that's how I do that.
I tend to, again, you've usually had a bit of a conversation already with these owners. You've built a little bit of rapport. You don't dive straight into it, but I'll sort of say, like, for me, the time budget comes from having already kind of asked probing questions about what that pet's routine is like. You know, do they go everywhere with the owner? Like, and then I'll sort of say, like, again, I'm recommending a lot of things right now. You know, I might be recommending hydrotherapy and acupuncture and a few different things, but I can appreciate that all of these things, not only, you know, they all cost money, but they also take a lot of time
to organize.
Exactly. So I'll then say, like, please don't feel like I'm pushing you through. I just want to give you your options, and then we're going to find what works best for you. So yeah, I'm I guess like you, I don't dance around the topic too much. I just make sure I've already kind of built up a little bit of rapport with them before I sort of talk about it. I find in terms of physical limitations, owners generally volunteer that information if you've had that kind of conversation.
Yeah, a lot of the time. I mean, if I foresee that after a surgery, for example, there'll be certain recovery time, they may need to be able to lift the pet. A lot of the time they'll be able to sort of see that. If they don't, I say, oh, can you foresee any sort of limiting factors? Is it a multi-story house? There's no lift. Obviously, when I see them in front of me, I can see whether this is an elderly person or not. So I usually know that. But most of the time that they'll disclose that.
Yeah, I think bottom line is empathy. So acknowledge this is a big time commitment, or this is, you know, potentially a big financial commitment. So, you know, how do you feel about that? Is it something that we can achieve together or not? So yeah, I think that's how you keep the judgment out, is by acknowledging that it's a lot. So they can either agree, or they're going to say, I think it's something that I can manage.
Yeah. I like the next question.
Yeah, I thought you might.
I talked about my naughty Australian kettle dog before, so I'm going to use her one more time for this one. It's like, so a question, what would you do? And that's a question I want to say almost every client asks me. And that's a really hard one, because ultimately it is their decision. And I'll go back to that saying it is their decision. But at the same time, they've just asked me for my opinion. And what I will say is, at the moment, I don't have a dog. We used to have a cattle dog in the family, and you guys won't be surprised that this cattle dog wasn't the easiest to handle. So given the choices for me, I would not have put this dog through intravenous chemotherapy. And I would have, if any treatment, I would not have chosen a protocol where we have to see the doctor a lot, because it would have been a heavy sedation. This dog would even push through decent sedations, I want to say. So that was just not feasible. So my decision for that would be to probably go down we'll make you comfortable, you get some nice pain relief, and when that day comes in a few days or weeks, then that's going to be that, because it would have been a fight with this dog for everyone involved. And then at that point, I would have had a conversation with them about Fluffy. I was like, what you've been telling me about your dog is that is a happy little chap, and usually I see them sitting in the consult room and I see, are they anxious around me? What are they like? I was like, I feel like we could probably work together well, and it looks like Fluffy enjoyed a few treats here with me already. And he might be very, very amenable to this. And then I say, that doesn't mean, though, you have to go for chemotherapy with your dog if that's not what you want to do. But I'll just try and engage a little bit what I think, how I can maybe work with their pet. And me opening up about my dog, saying that's just not something I would have done. Gives them a little bit sort of, I suppose, the comfort in a way to open up and say, oh, look, maybe we'll have a go. If it doesn't work, we'll stop. Or it's just not something we want to do.
Yeah, I do the same. I have a ragdoll, so she is also not amenable to anything she doesn't want to do. So again, I'll often use her to kind of commiserate and empathize with owners who, you know, have patients that they haven't necessarily been able to do absolutely everything with. And I come back to the sort of thing of, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think at the end of the day, we have to respect the patient's personality and their autonomy as well, and consider how much stress going ahead with certain treatments or things would place on that pet. But again, I think the question of what would you do is a lot easier to answer if, again, I answer it as if it was a friend that has asked me this question. And I also kind of factor in all that I've learned about this client and about the journey that they've been on with that pet.
Yeah.
This question here, how do you communicate to a client whose response is unexpected, especially in a situation when they almost come across non-caring before, during an end-of-life consultation?
I think that's hard because, I mean, hopefully at this point you got to know your client, and you'll be able to hopefully say, is the non-caring, is that a facade? That's just the facade they've put on to get them through this moment.
Yeah.
Or is it actual non-caring? I want to say if this is not the first time you've met them, you probably will be able to tell if they're really non-caring or if they are caring. I think if they're really non-caring, I mean, at the end of the day, all you can do is, again, lay out the facts as to why we're having this conversation and try and engage them back into the conversation about what their feelings are around these things. It is hard. I think it's equally hard, though, if someone just has the facade down, because you worry that they're not taking everything in that you're telling them. So I think it's just sort of pausing and trying to talk through some facts, really. Maybe they respond to that. The other thing is, dependent on time, is it worthwhile getting another person into the room? Because maybe they don't respond to me, but maybe they'll respond to my nurse or another vet. And God, that might be for whatever reason. It might just be me then not able to talk to. So that might be worth a try as well.
I think we underappreciate how anxious and uncomfortable a lot of our clientele is at the vets, in the same way that we don't feel very relaxed necessarily when we're at the doctors. Our clientele is often quite anxious. A lot of them will put on a bit of a poker face. I find that, for example, I am able to connect and enjoy my interactions with owners a lot more now that I deal with them solely in their homes, meaning that they're just so much more comfortable. Even though I'm often seeing them on their worst day, I see them, I guess, at their best because they're usually in their safe space and in their comfort space. We've got to recognize that when they come into the clinic, they're in our space and they're in our comfort space. And I guess it can be very hard for certain personality types to kind of drop their walls and be vulnerable to you. I think the best way to go about it is to just have the assumption that they do care. I mean, if they're at the vet clinic, they've always got the choice to not go ahead with veterinary treatment for their pets, whether it's euthanasia or palliative care or a vaccination. They always have the option to not be there. So the fact that they are there, the fact that they are there, I think we have to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they care. I think it's a lot harder on us mentally to do the opposite and assume that they don't care. Next question. Do one more question and then wrap up. I'm being told. Okay, Caitlin. All right, last question. I'm sure we've all seen cases where we feel that euthanasia has been too late. Do you think that euthanasia can ever be too early for palliative patients? I really like this question. Let's finish on this one.
You lead then.
I'll lead. Okay. So one of the things that I say to a lot of owners, especially when I'm having a difficult conversation or they're owners that are struggling to let go, I will say to them that I very rarely, if ever, have come across owners that have said to me, I felt like I said goodbye too soon. But overwhelmingly,
always the reverse.
Overwhelmingly, I meet owners who say that they felt like they waited too long. I firmly believe that there is quality of life and there's quality of death. And sometimes saying goodbye a little bit early, maybe that pet could have had a few more days. Maybe they could have had a few more weeks. Maybe they could have had a few more months. But if it means that we say goodbye sooner and they have a really good quality of death, one that's planned, one that's in the home, one where they're surrounded by their loved ones and they've got treats, if it means that they then haven't seen their worst day and they haven't dwindled away,
Didn't have to suffer.
they didn't have to suffer. I firmly believe that saying goodbye on a good day, that's what stays with owners. You know, when you think back on the pets that you've had, you firmly remember their ending. You know, you remember their life, but we all remember their death very vividly as well. And so if I think we can make that a good death, then, and that might mean that we are doing it sort of sooner rather than later, then I think that's a good thing. You know, we can give a very good and humane death with planning. And yet we don't always have control over their retirement and their wind down. We can't always keep them pain-free. So I do think that, you know, I'd rather kind of have a pet maybe miss out on a few days, but have a really kind of good death that kind of stays with that family. That's when I know I've done my job really well. So I guess that's kind of how I go about it. The other thing is, it comes down to the owners. When we say too early, as I said earlier, when an owner's time budget, their physical budget, their financial, and especially their emotional budget is at its end, it is reasonable to consider euthanasia. So a really good example of this is there are plenty of owners who, I'm sure you see them all the time, their anticipation and their anxiety of you know, that anticipatory grief of saying goodbye to their pet means that they can't enjoy the time that they have left with their pet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We see that a lot. They're counting down the time. If I just briefly cut in there, I've had clients ring up crying, and that sounds completely bizarre, that their pet didn't die 8 months after I told them the pet's still alive.
Yeah.
Because they'd stopped everything in their life. They didn't go on holiday because they were waiting for 8 months to be over because now the pet needs to be dead. And they're so frustrated in this.
Yeah.
So I think it's to prevent that in a way, isn't it?
And I've had patients who, other families, we would have gone longer. But for that family, we've gotten to a point where, again, that family doesn't have quality of life because they are so sad and so anxious, and they're watching their pet every second of the day thinking, are they going to decline? Are they going to die now? That it gets to a point where we say, we're stopping now because your quality of life is important to me as well as your pet's quality of life. And I can guarantee you that this ending is going to be good and peaceful with me, but right now I can't guarantee your quality of life. So we're going to make this decision together and we're going to say goodbye together. So that's my 2 cents. And that's a really nice question. I'm glad we can end on that. Okay, beautiful. All right, I'm going to get booted off soon. So we are going to love and leave you. Thank you so much for everyone joining us and all of your questions. It's been a real pleasure to spend the night with you and have this conversation.
Yeah, thank you guys. And there were really, really good questions in there. I love those.
Thank you for joining me.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to go and have another gin and tonic. So thank you very much, guys. Bye.
Bye.